The front entrance to our home is seldom used. We usually enter through the side door to the garage or the sliding glass doors leading to the patio. To the right of the entryway stands the formal living room, meticulously maintained but the least frequented room in the house. On the left, at the end of the entry, lies a hallway connecting to 3 bedrooms, including our spacious master suite and a guest bathroom. The formal living room, enveloped in darkness due to closed massive curtains, features a white camelbacked couch against the back wall, with large wingback chairs on either side, all facing a walnut coffee table. Although insignificant until that day, late that morning I found myself in a wingback chair facing away from the archway between the entry and the living room. In that chair, I have often contemplated my life and assessed potential losses during Emily's absence. The prospect of ending our troubled marriage brings concerns about our shared friends deciding their allegiances, the loss of our house, potential alimony payments for years, and the sudden disappearance of half my net worth alongside legal expenses. Despite these considerations, dealing with Emily, whom I describe as vindictive, remains an inevitable challenge. Amid my reflections, the side door opens, signaling Emily's return from grocery shopping. I realize I should have pretended to be in our bedroom to avoid another argument if caught in the living room. Arguments are commonplace, initiated by Emily's unwarranted criticism for minor infractions, fabricated reasons, or no reason at all. I understand it as a tactic to keep me off balance. Emily can prolong arguments for weeks over trivial matters, and I always find a way to placate her, believing it better to end disputes promptly. I deem life unbearable with constant friction and aim to settle fights as soon as possible, though the challenge lies in the short time until the next one. After 10 years of marriage, I see no solution other than passing away or divorce. Nonetheless, I persistently try to improve the situation, primarily for my sanity rather than to make things more pleasant for Emily. I hear the freezer door shut, realizing she has put away the frozen food. Anticipating her request for me to get the remaining groceries, I brace myself for her orders and criticism. To avoid her for as long as possible, I remain motionless, waiting for her call or whistle. The whistle, resembling that of a dog, has become nearly unbearable. Instead of her voice, I hear light footsteps as she approaches the entryway. If I had looked, I would have seen her stop at the tiled entry floor, peering down the hallway to ensure she is alone. Quietly waiting, Emily contemplates calling me in the car before getting home but feels safe assuming I am diligently working on the gazebo and in the backyard. Within seconds, I hear her cell phone chirp as she dials a number. Now in the entry, just 5 feet away from the back of the chair where I sit, Emily speaks to her ex-husband, David, about plans for Thursday afternoon. She mentions calling him at work after 1 o'clock and the logistics of their meeting. Still unnoticed, I listen as Emily discusses details with David, concluding with a light-hearted farewell. I hear the flip phone close and her footsteps retreat across the carpet towards the sliding glass door, whistling and calling out to the gazebo project I had been working on in the backyard. She seemed oblivious to my labored breathing and the pounding of blood in my heart and head. Tense situations were not new to me, and I relied on automatic responses honed from my experiences in the army and elsewhere. In such moments, the first rule was not to panic unless actively under attack. Utilize knowledge to one's advantage. Choose the right time to engage. Maintain a blank face, control breathing, and appear normal. I stood and entered the den, stating, "I'm here." I was in the bathroom. I've got to run to the hardware store and get parts for the gazebo. Crossing through the den toward the kitchen and the side door while avoiding eye contact with her, I marveled at my ability to articulate those words and my restraint from reacting violently. I walked by, and she gave me a look, noticing the redness in my face, advising me to wear a hat. She expressed concern about potential sunburn, mentioning not wanting to see my skin peeling off in a couple of days. Additionally, she informed me about groceries that needed to be brought in before going anywhere and emphasized not being gone all day. After dropping her phone into her purse on the kitchen counter, Emily went out to inspect my work on the gazebo, leaving criticisms for my return. Emily's communication style was typical, mostly involving instructions and implied or explicit criticism. As she entered the backyard, I retrieved her phone, checked the last dialed number, memorized it, and returned the phone to her purse. After putting away the groceries, I left in my small pickup truck but didn't head for the hardware store. I stopped at a local park a couple of blocks away. For the first 15 minutes, I replayed the short conversation in my mind, wanting to ensure I had every word memorized to make notes. There was no doubt about its meaning. My wife was having an affair, likely in our house, maybe even in our bed while I was at work. Furious, I felt I was subsidizing her infidelity by working to support her. Who was the man she called David? It wasn't her real father. The area code was local, and her parents lived 1,000 miles away in California. In the early days of our marriage, she sometimes called me David during lovemaking moments, though she had stopped doing so. I had thought she might be signaling a desire for kids, but we decided not to have children a couple of years into the marriage. She was undeniably a David's girl. Considering practical matters, I pondered my best course of action. Her lover would enter through the back gate on Thursday, likely walking down the alley. I contemplated ambushing him there, but wondered about dealing with my cheating wife. If the lover was on foot, his car had to be nearby. It struck me the lover would probably leave his car at the park. Determining who this person was became crucial. The obvious approach was to call the number from her cell phone. Having someone else make the call as if by mistake seemed plausible, with a woman being the most likely to get information. Who could make that call? Who else might know about this? The answer was clear. Emily's best friend was Sarah. If Sarah didn't know, I doubted anyone else did. Emily's sister was unlikely to have information since they had not been close since the sister's messy divorce and subsequent estrangement from the family. Could I ask Sarah? I had known her as long as Emily had, and Sarah had always been my friend too. However, women could be more loyal to each other than to their spouses. Sarah was married to Tom, who was 15 years her senior, and they seemed to be the most loving couple in the world. I figured that Sarah would tell Tom almost anything. Would she disclose this? I decided to try Tom. That meant a drive to the golf course, where Tom, semi-retired, volunteered on Saturdays as a goodwill ambassador for the course in exchange for a free round of golf during the week when the course was not full. On the way over, I planned my approach very carefully. I couldn't just blurt it out. What if the news got back to Sarah and then to Emily? I had to be careful. Riding in a golf cart with Tom as he checked on conditions at the 7th hole, I brought up a hypothetical question. I inquired about his approach to confidential conversations, asking whether he would feel obligated to keep it confidential or if he would share it with Sarah. Tom gave me an odd glance and continued driving for several yards. I clarified, asking if he and Sarah always shared what they heard from other people, even if it was shared in confidence. It was just a hypothetical scenario. Tom pulled over onto the grass, turning to look directly at me with an almost expectant expression. "Do you have a specific question for me? If you do, ask away," he said, maintaining the same strange and intense look on his face. I asked Tom if he could keep our conversation confidential if I were to pose a question. I promised that I wouldn't mention it unsolicited, but if Sarah were to inquire, I wouldn't lie to her. That was my operating principle. I assured him that I could keep a secret but wouldn't deceive my friend's wife. It was evident that Tom knew something, and I sensed that he wanted to share it with me. After composing myself, I directly asked him if he knew anything about a possible affair my wife might be having. I rephrased to make it clearer, asking if he had any knowledge of an affair Emily was currently having or had in the past. Tom's response flowed out like a dam bursting. He recounted an incident from last New Year's at the Holden's party. Everyone was outside preparing for the fireworks display when Sarah fell ill from the champagne despite her infrequent drinking habits. She went upstairs to the bathroom. On the landing, she heard someone attempting the doorknob while she was getting sick in the toilet. When she washed up and left the bathroom, she heard noises coming from down the hall where it turns towards some bedrooms. She was afraid that someone else might be ill and she walked down there and looked. Emily was up against the wall at the end of the hallway, and some big dude was, well, there's no good way to say it. He had her against the wall with her legs wrapped around his waist. Emily saw Sarah standing there, and she smiled and did a little wave off like, "Get the hell out of here." On the way home, she shared the details with Tom. Sarah and Emily, being long-standing friends, needed to discuss matters before taking any action. I suggested immediate disclosure to me. Ultimately, Sarah had a conversation with my wife, who conveyed that the incident with David was a one-time occurrence fueled by drinks, a disagreement with me, and aggressive advances from David, a known bully who married into wealth. Sarah, aware of David's reputation, requested that I keep it under wraps, not wanting to jeopardize my marriage over a singular event. However, Tom made it clear to Sarah that if I ever directly inquired about it, he wouldn't lie. The burden of this secret has weighed heavily on him for the past 5 months. He's relieved it's out in the open, but deeply sorry for what I'm going through. Unfortunately, it's not over. Sarah deceived her. Emily has been involved with David, or perhaps someone else by now. I overheard her talking to him on the phone just an hour ago. Let's head back to my place and discuss what Sarah has to say. Sarah and Tom invited me over to their place to discuss further. As we sat in their living room, Sarah recounted the details of her confrontation with Emily. She had confronted Emily about the incident at the Holden's party, but Emily had downplayed it, claiming it was a one-time mistake fueled by alcohol and frustration. Sarah had believed her at the time. But now, with the new information from Tom and my own suspicions, she felt betrayed by Emily's lies. We brainstormed ways to gather more evidence. Sarah suggested that we could catch Emily and David in the act, providing undeniable proof of her ongoing infidelity. It was risky, but I felt I had no other choice. I needed to know the truth and confront Emily with the evidence. We decided to set up a hidden camera in the house. Tom, who was skilled with electronics, offered to help install it. We planned for Thursday, the day Emily had mentioned meeting David. Tom and Sarah reassured me that they would support me through this difficult time. Despite the pain, their solidarity gave me some comfort. The next few days were a blur. I tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy at work, but my mind was constantly preoccupied with thoughts of Emily's betrayal. I couldn't concentrate, and my productivity suffered. I dreaded going home, knowing that I had to act as if everything was normal while preparing for the confrontation. On Thursday morning, I left for work as usual, but instead of heading to the office, I went to Tom and Sarah's house. Tom had prepared the camera, and we reviewed the plan one last time. I felt a knot of anxiety in my stomach, but I knew I had to go through with it. Around noon, I received a text from Emily saying she was heading out for a meeting and would be back in a few hours. This was my cue. I drove back to our house, parking a few blocks away to avoid suspicion. I entered through the side door, moving quietly to avoid alerting Emily if she was still around. I set up the camera in the master bedroom, positioning it to capture the bed clearly. I checked the recording feed on my phone, making sure everything was working correctly. With the camera in place, I hid in the guest bedroom, waiting for the inevitable. Time seemed to crawl as I sat there, my heart pounding in my chest. Every sound made me jump, anticipating Emily's arrival. Finally, I heard the sound of the side door opening and footsteps entering the house. I held my breath, listening intently. Emily's voice came through clearly as she greeted David, her tone warm and affectionate. I felt a surge of anger and betrayal, but I forced myself to stay calm. I needed to wait for the right moment. The sound of laughter and whispered conversation filled the air as Emily and David moved towards the master bedroom. I checked the camera feed on my phone, seeing them enter the room together. My heart sank as I watched them embrace, their actions confirming my worst fears. I waited, letting the camera capture everything. Emily and David were completely absorbed in each other, oblivious to my presence. After what felt like an eternity, I decided it was time to confront them. I stood up, my hands shaking with a mix of anger and adrenaline. I walked quietly to the master bedroom, pausing at the doorway. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The look of shock and fear on Emily's face as she saw me was almost satisfying, but it couldn't erase the pain I felt. "Mark," Emily gasped, trying to cover herself with the bedsheets. David jumped up, looking both surprised and angry. "What the hell are you doing here?" he demanded. Ignoring David, I focused on Emily. "How could you do this to me, Emily? After everything we've been through, this is how you repay me." Emily's face turned pale as she struggled to find words. "Mark, I'm sorry. It's not what you think." I cut her off, my voice cold and steady. "Don't lie to me, Emily. I've heard everything. I know about you and David." David tried to intervene, stepping closer with an aggressive stance. "Listen, Mark, this is between you and Emily. Leave me out of it." I turned to him, My anger barely contained. This is very much about you, David. You've been sleeping with my wife in my house. You don't get to tell me to leave you out of it. Emily looked desperate. Please, Mark, let's just talk about this. We can work through it. I shook my head. No, Emily, there's no working through this. You've been lying to me for months. How long did you think you could keep this up? Emily started to cry, but I felt no sympathy. I never wanted to hurt you, Mark. I don't know. I was confused. Confused? I echoed, my voice rising. You don't accidentally have an affair. You made a choice, Emily. Every time you snuck around with David, you chose to betray me. David, looking for an escape, edged towards the door. I think I should leave. Stay right there, I ordered, my voice like steel. We're not done yet. I turned my attention back to Emily. Tell me everything. How long has this been going on? Emily hesitated, glancing at David before looking back at me. About 6 months, she admitted quietly. We reconnected at a mutual friend's party and it just happened. I felt a bitter laugh escape me. It just happened. That's your excuse? Did you ever think about me? About us? Emily's tears flowed freely now. I did, Mark. But things between us haven't been good for a while. You've been distant, and I felt so alone. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So your solution was to cheat on me? To find comfort in someone else's bed? David finally spoke up, trying to defend Emily. Look, man, she was unhappy. You both were. Maybe this was inevitable. I snapped at him, my patience gone. You don't get to justify this, David. You're a part of the problem. You preyed on her vulnerabilities. Emily's sobs grew louder, and she buried her face in her hands. I'm so sorry, Mark. I never wanted it to come to this. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on me. It's too late for apologies, Emily. You made your choices. Now we have to deal with the consequences. I pulled out my phone and showed them the recording from the hidden camera. Emily's eyes widened in horror. You recorded us? Yes, I said, my voice unwavering. I needed proof. Proof of your betrayal. I'm going to file for divorce, Emily, and I'm going to make sure you don't get a dime more than you deserve. Emily's cries turned to pleas. Please, Mark, don't do this. We can still fix things. I shook my head, feeling a sense of finality. No, Emily, we can't. It's over. I turned to leave, but before I did, I looked at David one last time. And you stay away from me and my soon-to-be ex-wife. If I ever see you near her again, I won't be so civil. With that, I walked out of the bedroom, leaving Emily and David to face the mess they had created. The weight of the betrayal was heavy, but I knew that this was the first step towards reclaiming my life and finding a way to move forward. The days following the confrontation were a blur of legal consultations and emotional turmoil. I met with my lawyer, Jennifer, who reassured me that with the evidence I had, the divorce proceedings would likely be in my favor. Jennifer explained the legal steps and what I could expect in terms of alimony, asset division, and other considerations. Emily attempted to reach out to me several times, but I ignored her calls and messages. I needed time to process everything and decide my next steps without her influence. I spent a lot of time at Tom and Sarah's place, finding solace in their support and understanding. One evening, as I sat with Tom in his study, he shared more about the incident at the Holden's party. Mark, I didn't want to bring this up earlier, but there's more you should know, Tom began, looking uncomfortable. Sarah overheard Emily talking to someone else that night, not just David. It seems like this might not be an isolated affair. My heart sank. What do you mean? Tom sighed. Emily was talking to another man, someone she referred to as Mike. It sounded like they had plans to meet up as well. I didn't want to believe it at first, but now? The revelation hit me like a ton of bricks. Emily's betrayal was deeper than I had imagined. Mike? Do you have any idea who he is? Tom shook his head. No, but Sarah and I have been trying to figure it out. We thought you should know before things went any further. I appreciated Tom's honesty, even though it added to my pain. Thanks, Tom. I need to find out who this Mike is and what his involvement with Emily has been. With renewed determination, I decided to confront Emily one last time to get the truth. I called her, and arranged a meeting at a neutral location, a small cafe downtown. Emily sounded hopeful, perhaps thinking this was a chance for reconciliation. Little did she know, I had other plans. When I arrived at the cafe, Emily was already seated, nervously fidgeting with her cup. I sat down across from her, my expression stern. Emily, I need you to be honest with me. Who is Mike? Her face paled, and she looked away. Mark, I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, I said sharply. Tom and Sarah heard you talking to him at the Holden's party. How long has this been going on? Emily's eyes filled with tears. Mike is just a friend. He has nothing to do with any of this. Just a friend? I scoffed. You expect me to believe that after everything that's happened? Tell me the truth, Emily. Is he another lover? She hesitated, then finally nodded. Yes, but it's over now. It was a mistake, just like David. Anger surged through me. How many more mistakes are there? Emily, how many more lies have you told me? Emily broke down, sobbing. I'm so sorry, Mark. I don't know why I did it. I was just so unhappy. I took a deep breath, trying to control my emotions. It doesn't matter why you did it. What matters is that you betrayed me, repeatedly. I can't live like this anymore. We sat in silence for a few moments, Emily crying softly. I finally stood up. I'll be in touch with my lawyer. Expect to hear from her soon. Goodbye, Emily. Leaving the cafe, I felt a strange sense of relief. The truth was out, and I could finally start to move on. As I walked back to my car, I resolved to focus on rebuilding my life and finding happiness again, free from the lies and betrayal that had overshadowed my marriage. With the revelation about Mike weighing heavily on me, I felt an even greater urgency to move forward with the divorce. The next few days were filled with meetings with Jennifer to finalize the paperwork and discuss the legal strategy. I also met with a therapist, Dr. Lawson, to help process my emotions and start healing from the betrayal. Sarah called me one evening, her voice full of concern. Mark, I've been thinking about everything that's happened. I can't believe Emily has been so deceitful. If there's anything more we can do to help, please let us know. I appreciated Sarah's support and thanked her. You've already done so much, Sarah. Just knowing I have friends who care means a lot. During my therapy sessions, Dr. Lawson helped me understand that Emily's actions were not a reflection of my worth. Infidelity is often more about the person who cheats than the one who is cheated on, Dr. Lawson explained. It's important to focus on your own healing and not let her actions define your self-worth. Dr. Lawson suggested writing down my feelings and experiences as a way to process them. I started keeping a journal, pouring out my thoughts and emotions each day. It was a cathartic process, helping me to make sense of the chaos in my mind. One afternoon, I received an unexpected call from David's wife, Lisa. Her voice was shaky as she spoke. Mark, I just found out about David and Emily. I'm so sorry for what you're going through. I had no idea. I was taken aback. Lisa, I'm so sorry you're dealing with this too. How did you find out? Lisa explained that she had overheard a conversation between David and a friend, where he bragged about his affair with Emily. I confronted him, and he admitted everything. I'm devastated, but I wanted you to know that you're not alone in this. We talked for a while, sharing our experiences and offering each other support. It felt good to connect with someone who truly understood what I was going through. Lisa and I agreed to stay in touch and support each other as we navigated the difficult road ahead. Meanwhile, Jennifer was making progress with the divorce proceedings. She advised me to gather all financial documents and records of my interactions with Emily and her lovers. This would help strengthen our case and ensure a fair settlement. As the weeks passed, I started to feel a glimmer of hope. The support from friends, therapy, and my own determination to rebuild my life gave me strength. I spent more time with Tom and Sarah, who continued to be a source of unwavering support. One evening, as we sat on their porch, Tom shared some advice that resonated deeply with me. Mark, this is a tough time, but remember that it's also an opportunity for a new beginning. You deserve happiness and peace, and you'll find it again. His words stayed with me as I worked on rebuilding my life. I threw myself into my work, finding solace in the routine and the sense of accomplishment it provided. I also started to reconnect with old friends and hobbies I had neglected during my marriage. Emily continued to reach out, pleading for forgiveness and another chance. But I knew there was no going back. The trust was shattered, and there was no way to rebuild what we once had. I focused on moving forward, determined to create a new, fulfilling life for myself. As the divorce proceedings moved forward, Jennifer remained confident in our case. "You're doing great, Mark. Stay strong, and we'll get through this." Her words, along with the support of my friends and therapist, gave me the courage to face each day. I knew the road ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to face it head-on, leaving the pain of betrayal behind and looking forward to a brighter future. As the divorce proceedings continued, I began to find a new rhythm in my life. My daily routines provided a sense of stability, and my sessions with Dr. Lawson were helping me navigate the emotional fallout from Emily's betrayals. Despite the progress, there were still moments when the weight of it all felt overwhelming. One day, during a particularly intense session, Dr. Lawson suggested I consider joining a support group for individuals who had experienced infidelity. "It can be incredibly healing to connect with others who have been through similar experiences," she said. "Sharing your story and hearing theirs can provide a sense of community and understanding." Taking her advice, I attended my first support group meeting the following week. The group was small, with about 10 people, each with their own story of betrayal and heartbreak. As I listened to them share their experiences, I felt a profound sense of empathy and solidarity. When it was my turn to speak, I recounted my story, from discovering Emily's affair with David to the revelation about Mike. The group's supportive responses were comforting, and I left the meeting feeling less isolated. Meanwhile, the legal process was moving forward. Jennifer was diligent in her efforts, and her confidence in our case was reassuring. "We've got a strong position, Mark," she said during one of our meetings. "Emily's actions have clearly violated the terms of your marriage, and the evidence you've gathered will support your claims." Despite the legal battles, I began to see glimmers of hope for the future. I started exploring new hobbies and interests that I had put on hold during my marriage. I took up running, finding solace in the physical exertion and the rhythm of my feet hitting the pavement. I also reconnected with old friends, arranging regular meetups and activities that brought joy and laughter back into my life. One afternoon, Sarah called with an exciting proposition. "Tom and I are organizing a weekend getaway to a cabin in the mountains. We thought it would be a great opportunity for you to relax and recharge. What do you think?" The idea of escaping the stress of the divorce and spending time in nature was appealing. "That sounds amazing, Sarah. Count me in." The weekend trip turned out to be exactly what I needed. Surrounded by the beauty of the mountains and the company of good friends, I felt a renewed sense of peace and optimism. We spent our days hiking, exploring, and enjoying the tranquility of the outdoors. In the evenings, we gathered around the fireplace, sharing stories and laughter. During one of these evening conversations, Tom offered some valuable advice. "Mark, I know this has been a rough journey, but it's important to remember that this is just one chapter of your life. There's so much more ahead for you, and I truly believe that better days are coming." His words resonated with me deeply. I realized that while Emily's betrayal had been devastating, it didn't have to define the rest of my life. I had the power to shape my future and create a new, fulfilling life for myself. Returning from the trip, I felt a renewed sense of determination. I continued to focus on my personal growth, attending support group meetings, and working with Dr. Lawson. My relationship with Lisa also evolved into a supportive friendship as we both navigated the challenges of moving on from our respective marriages. Emily continued to reach out, her messages ranging from pleas for forgiveness to attempts at rekindling our relationship. I remained firm in my decision. "There's no going back, Emily," I told her during one particularly emotional call. "We need to move on and find our own paths forward." As the months passed, I started to see the light at the end of the tunnel. The divorce was nearing its conclusion, and I was beginning to envision a future free from the shadows of betrayal. With the support of my friends, my therapist, and my newfound resilience, I was ready to embrace whatever came next. As the divorce neared its final stages, I began to feel a sense of closure. The legal battles were exhausting, but Jennifer's expertise and determination ensured that everything was handled smoothly. Emily's attempts to stall the process were futile, and I was grateful for the solid support system I had in place. One evening, after a particularly grueling day in court, I met up with Tom and Sarah for dinner. Over a hearty meal, we reflected on the past few months and the progress I had made. "You've come a long way, Mark," Sarah said, raising her glass in a toast. "Here's to new beginnings." I smiled, feeling a genuine sense of optimism. "Thanks, Sarah. I couldn't have done it without you and Tom." As we continued to talk, I realized how much I had changed since discovering Emily's infidelity. I was no longer the passive, accommodating person I once was. I had found my voice, learned to stand up for myself, and rediscovered my passions. I felt stronger and more confident than ever before. In the weeks that followed, I focused on finalizing the details of the divorce and preparing for life on my own. I moved into a new apartment, a cozy space that felt like a fresh start. I decorated it with items that brought me joy, creating a sanctuary that was truly mine. One Saturday, as I unpacked the last of my boxes, Lisa called. "Mark, I wanted to thank you for your support through all of this. It's been a difficult journey, but knowing you were there made it a little easier." "Likewise, Lisa," I replied. "I'm glad we could support each other. How are you holding up?" "I'm doing better," she said. "I'm focusing on my work and spending time with friends. It helps to keep busy." We talked for a while, sharing our progress and plans for the future. It was comforting to know that I wasn't alone in this journey. Lisa and I made plans to meet up for coffee the following week, eager to continue supporting each other as we moved forward. As I settled into my new routine, I found joy in the little things: morning runs, cooking meals for myself, and exploring the city. I even started volunteering at a local community center, finding fulfillment in helping others. One day, while volunteering, I met Rebecca, a fellow volunteer who shared my passion for community service. We quickly became friends, bonding over our shared interests and experiences. Rebecca's positive energy and outlook on life were infectious, and I found myself looking forward to our time together. As we grew closer, I opened up to Rebecca about my past. She listened with compassion, offering words of encouragement and support. "You're stronger than you realize, Mark," she said one evening after a long day at the community center. "You've been through so much, but you've come out the other side even stronger." Her words touched me deeply, and I realized that I was finally starting to heal. The scars of betrayal were still there, but they were no longer the defining feature of my life. I was building a new, fulfilling existence, surrounded by people who cared about me and supported my growth. In the final meeting with Jennifer, we reviewed the last of the divorce documents. "This is it, Mark," she said, handing me the papers. "Once you sign these, it's officially over." I took a deep breath and signed the documents, feeling a sense of finality. "Thank you, Jennifer, for everything." She smiled warmly. "You're welcome, Mark. You've handled this with grace and strength. I wish you all the best in your new chapter." Leaving Jennifer's office, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The divorce was officially over, and I was free to move forward with my life. I walked out into the sunny afternoon, feeling a renewed sense of hope and possibility. That evening, I met up with Tom and Sarah to celebrate. We raised our glasses once again, toasting to new beginnings and the bright future ahead. "Here's to moving on and finding happiness," Tom said, clinking his glass against mine. As I looked around at my friends, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. The journey had been painful, but it had also led me to a place of strength and resilience. I knew that with their support and my newfound courage, I could face whatever came next. With the divorce finally behind me, I felt an overwhelming sense of freedom. My new life was beginning, unencumbered by the weight of betrayal and mistrust. I dedicated myself to my work, finding fulfillment in the projects I took on. My colleagues noticed the change in me, often commenting on my renewed energy and focus. Rebecca and I continued to grow closer, and our friendship became an essential part of my healing process. One evening, after a long day at the community center, we decided to grab dinner at a nearby restaurant. As we sat down with our meals, Rebecca looked at me thoughtfully. "Mark, have you ever thought about what you want for the future? Beyond the immediate goals, I mean." I paused, considering her question. Honestly, I've been so focused on getting through the divorce and rebuilding my life that I haven't thought much about long-term plans. But I do know that I want to keep growing, personally and professionally, and I want to surround myself with people who truly care about me. Rebecca smiled. That's a good start. And remember, it's okay to take your time. Healing and figuring out what you want can take a while. Her words resonated with me. For the first time in a long while, I felt at peace with not having all the answers. I was on a journey, and it was okay to take it one step at a time. Meanwhile, Emily continued to try to reach out, sending messages and leaving voicemails. Her tone varied from apologetic to desperate, but I knew I needed to maintain my boundaries. I had already decided that there was no place for her in my future. Her repeated attempts to contact me only reinforced my resolve to move on. One evening, as I was going through some old belongings, I stumbled upon a box of memories from my marriage with Emily. It was filled with photos, mementos, and letters that chronicled our time together. I felt a pang of sadness, but also a sense of closure. I realized that it was time to let go of the past, not just emotionally but physically as well. The next day, I called Lisa and asked if she wanted to join me for a symbolic gesture of moving on. She agreed, and we met at a park with our respective boxes of memories. Together, we sifted through the items, sharing stories and reflecting on how far we had come. As we finished, Lisa suggested we release some balloons as a symbolic gesture. We wrote messages on them, messages of forgiveness, letting go, and hope for the future. As we released the balloons into the sky, I felt a profound sense of liberation. It was a final farewell to the past and a hopeful embrace of the future. In the weeks that followed, I continued to build my new life. I started taking classes in subjects that interested me, from cooking to photography. I joined a local running club and participated in weekend races, finding joy in the camaraderie and the challenge. Rebecca remained a constant source of support and inspiration. Our friendship deepened, and I began to see the possibility of something more. However, I was cautious, wanting to ensure that I was fully healed before embarking on a new relationship. One evening, as we walked through the city park, Rebecca turned to me and said, "Mark, I've seen you grow so much over the past few months. You've become someone who knows his worth and isn't afraid to stand up for himself. It's been amazing to watch." Her words touched me deeply. Thank you, Rebecca. You've been a big part of that growth. I don't know where I'd be without your support. We continued walking, the silence between us comfortable and full of unspoken understanding. I knew that whatever the future held, I was ready to face it with confidence and resilience. As the year came to a close, I reflected on everything that had happened. The betrayal, the pain, the struggle. It had all led me to a place of strength and self-discovery. I was no longer defined by the past, but by the choices I made each day. With the support of my friends, my newfound passions, and my growing sense of self, I looked forward to the future with hope and anticipation. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that I had the strength to overcome any challenge. As the new year approached, I felt an increasing sense of anticipation. My life had undergone a transformation, and I was eager to see what the future held. However, not all the threads of the past had been neatly tied up. Emily's persistent attempts to reach out had not gone unnoticed, and I began to suspect there was more to her intentions. One evening, as I was locking up the community center after a late volunteer shift, I noticed a car parked across the street. Its headlights flicked off as I stepped outside, and a chill ran down my spine. Something about the situation felt off. I hurried to my car, scanning the area for any signs of danger. The next day, I received an anonymous letter in my mailbox. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the message was clear. You think it's over, but it's not. Watch your back. My heart raced as I read the words. Who could be behind this? Was it Emily, or someone connected to her? I decided to confide in Rebecca and Tom about the letter. We met at a quiet cafe, and I showed them the note. "This is serious," Tom said, his expression grim. "You need to be careful, Mark. We should report this to the police." Rebecca agreed. "Whoever sent this wants to intimidate you, but you can't let them succeed. We'll figure this out together." I filed a report with the local police, who assured me they would investigate. In the meantime, I took extra precautions, changing my routines and being more vigilant about my surroundings. Despite the fear, I refused to let it control my life. One night, as I was leaving a late meeting with my lawyer, Jennifer, I noticed the same car from before parked nearby. My instincts screamed at me to be cautious. I decided to take a different route home, weaving through side streets and alleys to shake any potential followers. As I approached my apartment building, I saw a figure lurking near the entrance. My pulse quickened, and I prepared to confront whoever it was. To my shock, it was Emily, looking disheveled and desperate. "Mark, please, I need to talk to you," she pleaded. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, keeping my distance. "You shouldn't be here." "I know, but I have to warn you," she said, her voice trembling. "Someone's been following me too. I think it's Mike. He's not who I thought he was. He's dangerous." Emily's words sent a shiver down my spine. "Why should I believe you? You've lied to me about everything." "I know, and I'm sorry," she cried. "But this is different. He's been threatening me ever since I ended things with him. I think he's the one who sent that letter to you." The pieces started to fall into place. Mike wasn't just a lover. He was a threat. "Why didn't you go to the police?" I asked. "He said he'd hurt me if I did," she replied, her eyes wide with fear. I didn't know where else to turn. Realizing the gravity of the situation, I decided to take Emily's warnings seriously.
All right, come inside.
"We need to figure out what to do." Once inside, I called Tom and Rebecca, updating them on the situation. "We need to keep an eye out for this guy," Tom said. "I'll stay with you tonight, Mark, just in case." Rebecca offered to drive Emily to a safe location where she could stay for a while. "We need to keep her away from here until we know more," she suggested. The next few days were tense. The police were informed about Mike and his threats, and they increased patrols around my neighborhood. Tom and I stayed vigilant, taking turns keeping watch and ensuring that Emily was safe. One evening, while on watch, Tom spotted a shadowy figure lurking near the building. "That's him," he whispered. "I'm calling the police." We watched as the figure moved closer, clearly trying to find a way into the building. The police arrived swiftly, apprehending Mike before he could cause any harm. He was arrested, and a thorough investigation revealed his history of threats and intimidation. With Mike in custody, a sense of relief washed over us. Emily was safe, and the immediate danger had passed. However, the experience left me more cautious and aware of the potential threats that lingered from my past. As the new year dawned, I felt a renewed sense of purpose and determination. The ordeal with Mike had shown me the importance of vigilance and the strength of my support system. With Rebecca, Tom, and Sarah by my side, I knew I could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The thrill of overcoming such a dangerous situation gave me a newfound confidence. I was no longer just surviving. I was thriving. And with the lessons I had learned, I was ready to embrace a future filled with hope, strength, and resilience.